Hello there, my name is Idris, and since my Twitch adventures didn't go so well due to connections and recording issues, streaming isn't going to be an option for a while. So I thought I would make a series of videos in real time, so that way you can see everything and see where I click. I'm not going to use a lot of shortcuts, and I know some of you like seeing everything and seeing where I click. So this is going to be a continuation of the previous video I did on how to set up your reference image. So I figured now that the reference images are set up, might as well do something about it. So we're going to make this dragon character by Fabien Mense. I'll have a link to his awesome work in the description, so please do check it out. So to start off, I am going to, this entire video will be about blocking out the character, and as you can see now, I'm blocking out the eyes. I'm going to block out the eyes in a separate subtool. I am going to break the character into the body. That will be our main subtool. The body will be using polygroups for the major part of the blockout phase, and the eyes will be a separate subtool, the horns would be a separate subtool, the eyebrows, and the his pair of shorts. And so yeah, just append a sphere, set it into position, and then mirror and weld. This error, because reasons, doesn't matter, just hit yes, and we are good to go. Now jumping back to our main sphere, we're going to use that to make the pelvic area, the pelvic bone, changing our draw mode so we can see our model and as well as our reference. Then we are going to set up our Dynamesh. We're going to be using groups for this particular blockout. Gonna keep the resolution of 128 because you can see that we are 43,000 polygons, but when we scale down and re-Dynamesh, it's going to be much lower. That's how Dynamesh works. It's based on the scale of your model. So if you scale it down, you need more resolution to have a higher poly count. So we're just gonna move this into position. We can see that our reference isn't perfectly symmetrical. It's not an issue. Things in 2D will not always be perfect, and that is perfectly fine because it's hand drawn. Dynamesh, and see we've scaled down to 4K, 4,000 polys. So 128 resolution to start off is pretty good. We're going to roughly shape this into the shape we need. Since it's a very stylish character, we're not going to have a lot of subtools, a lot of groups, not subtools. We're not going to have a subtool, a group for the rib cage, the abs, the upper thigh, lower thigh. We're going to use a lot less groups, a lot less geometry groups than on a more realistic, more stylized character, since it's a very basic character. Press M to pick the subtool you want to insert. Out of 3, we have inserted this this sphere, but we could have used, since we're going to block out the entire chest, we could have used a cylinder as well. Decided to use a sphere. Doesn't really matter. Try to pick out of the 3. Try to pick the one that makes more sense. But between a sphere and a and the cylinder here wasn't a whole lot of difference. You can see that the character isn't perfectly symmetrical, perfectly centered. It's not a big problem. So using the move topological brush, we are going to rough it into position. Like so. Tweaking, not a lot to say. We are going to, since we're using Zbrush Core, we don't have the option to project our geometry. So we are going to be using Dynamesh to increase, instead of subdividing, we're going to use Dynamesh to progressively increase our resolution. So in this blockout phase, it's very important for us to make sure we get everything as close as in the ballpark of what we want as possible. So we might take a little bit more time than if we were inside of Zbrush, and inside of Zbrush you can always use Z-remesh or retopologize your character inside of Zbrush or in an outside package. And then if you need to make big changes, you can just go down in subdivision and make your broad changes there. But since we don't have the option to go back down, we're going to make sure that when we are in this lower resolution state, lower poly state, that we get everything as nice as possible. Here we're inside of Zbrush Core. So if you have Zbrush Core, this is what you would use. If you have access to both, I would recommend that you try and do this every once in a while. Since inside of Zbrush you have so many options, it's easy to get spoiled by the tools we have. And it's a nice exercise to try and find solutions and fixes and workarounds with more limited options. So since Zbrush Core is a lighter version of Zbrush, you can't do a lot of things Zbrush can do, but that doesn't mean you can't do anything. So trying to work around the problems and trying to make the best model you can inside of Zbrush Core will teach you, will force you to be a better artist. I'm air quoting, and you can't see me. That way, when you go back to Zbrush, you will be much more efficient, and you'll have more confidence in doing what you have to do. Because mostly growing as an artist is being more confident in your strokes, in the shapes you make, and sometimes it's easy to rely on the software to help us out. And when you don't have so many options, you have to build those skills to compensate for the lack of the options inside of software. So if you have Zbrush Core, if you ever switch to Zbrush, if you were very good inside of Zbrush Core, you'll be very good, even better inside of Zbrush. Now, if you're working inside of for production or for a client, I would still use Zbrush because of time. It's you can do a lot of things inside of Zbrush Core, but it will take a lot more time. and when it's paid work, yeah, you want to be as efficient as possible. That gives you the artist, that gives you more time to do more work instead of just one work, and doing something faster allows you to give a lower quote, so the client pays less, it takes less time to do, you get more work done, everybody wins. But if it's personal work and you want to practice and hone your skills, ZBrush Core is pretty good for this. It's like if you are a digital painter, stop using Photoshop every once in a while and just sketch on paper. Will help your art skills. So yeah, we've blocked out the skull, and we've cleaned it up using smooth. And now we're going to try and work that jaw inside of the skull. Maybe not now. You can see the front and the side view don't actually match at the beak. So we're going to average that out. We're also missing the arms, the legs. So I will probably do that. Yeah. So I'm going to hit M, pick cylinder, and we are going to insert 2 cylinders for the legs. And we're going to move them into position. And since it's a pretty simple pause and pretty simple character, we're not going to do the thigh. We're not going to block out the thigh, the calves, and the knees. We're just going to use 1 cylinder for the entire leg. Then we're going to shape it into position. You can see that the legs aren't exactly symmetrical on the reference, but that's not a big problem. We're just going to average it out. Trying to look at our character from every angle, seeing what's missing, seeing what's wrong. You'll see me hitting focal shift a lot, and that's not intentional. Inside of ZBrush and inside of ZBrush Core, these the draw size and the focal shift are inverted. So that means that focal shift, every time I hit focal shift, I meant to hit draw size because I'm used to it. That's where draw size is inside of ZBrush. So if you see me hitting focal shift all the time, it's not intentional. Trying to work out that jaw inside of the skull, like so. Focal shift instead of size. Will he ever learn? Probably not. Trying to figure out how that that jaw fits inside the beak. We're gonna be tweaking that area. It's a new H in the word. That area a lot, because it's a weird transition. The eyes are pretty big, so it's a bit tough to work. Here I'm going to insert this cylinder, and then I'm going to rotate it into click rough shape, and I'm going to mask, but for some reason I didn't use the lasso option of the mask tool that I should have used. But since this tail is so low in polygons, for now it's not really a big issue. But see here, I am masking using a rectangle, and for organic shapes it's not a good idea. I don't know why I did it, but it's not a big problem. But if you if you have to make organic selections, usually it's best to use the lasso. But you can see it's such low res. It's not an issue. Smooth it out, and you can already see that square selection is no longer an issue. Smooth that tail end. Check it from every angle. We can see that the side view is off. And bulk it up. And we're going to redynamesh and clean it up. Save. Every once in a while it's good to save. Zbrush core has yet to crash on me, but still, good practice. That lower jaw still annoying me. Probably doing something off screen. Same as the legs. Should have reset the 3D gizmo before I did this, since it's the gizmo was at an odd angle, so it's skewing the arm a bit. Move it into position, roughly. And you can see that the arms are pretty off. Since I angled the two pieces too close together at one point, the Zbrush core merged them together. It's not a big problem, since we are going to dynamesh this whole thing together in the end, but something to be aware of. Sometimes if you rotate two pieces too close to the center axis, it's something that can happen. Bend the two spheres for the hands. Scale them and putting into position. Now we're going to insert cubes because it seemed to be the most appropriate shape for the feet. It's the same thing. I'm not sure the front and the side view are exactly perfectly aligned, so I'm not sure of the angle of the feet, so I'm just going to average out what I think is correct. Roughly shaping the feet. Yeah, we've pretty much blocked out everything. And I'm masking and I'm hiding, and then I'm masking the rest of the body to allow me to rotate the arms. Since the arms are too close to the body, when we dynamesh later, leaving them in that position would result in the arms merging, dynameshing and merging with the rest of the body, and we don't want that. So we're taking the arms further apart. That way we won't have an issue later. And now we're going to add the really last bit of anatomy of Blockout. That is the horns. And for the horns, we're not, it's in a separate subtool, so we're not going to be using Dynamesh. We're just going to be using the Subdivine method, the classic. And like the tail, for some reason, I didn't use lasso to mask my horns, but it's not an issue. So low poly. I wanted to use the transpose so that when you're not using the gizmo to mask out the shape, but for some reason it didn't give me a clean mask like I wanted. So I ended up masking by using just the simple rectangle mask selection. Forgot to turn on symmetry. I'm using move. I have to set it to rotate. There you go. Trying to mask using transpose again, not working. I find the transpose tool a bit easier to work with when you want to bend something rather than using the 3D gizmo. Mask the end and invert it to rotate that. And we have roughly set into position. Try to scale down that bit at the end, but it's skewed, so didn't really matter. We're going to shape it using the move topological brush and the smooth tool. Smooth tool you have access to using shift. Oh, symmetry is still not turned on. There you go. So we're going to smooth out all these rough transitions and then move the result into position. So, clean it up. Have a nice edge. See, we don't have enough. We don't have enough geometry to hit focal shift again. We don't have enough geometry to give ourselves a proper curve. But it's better to work with whatever we have rather than subdividing now. The longer you can spend at a lower resolution working the issue you have, the better. That's the biggest mistakes beginners do is going up too soon, too fast in resolution. If you have something, if you want to move shapes, if you want to block out something, if you want to give the volume you want to something, at 1,000,000 polygon, it's going to be a big blob, and it's going to be very difficult for you to work with. It's not going to look good, and it's something you should avoid if you can. And that is usually that's usually how you can tell someone is beginning, is that they go too high too fast. So try to work at the lowest subdivision you need for as long as you can. when you're blocking out, you want to be as low as possible, and then when you are refining, you want to jump one scale up. So you've made all the volume for the chest, so that's done. So that's at your lower resolution. Then you want to go up a bit and start to work your transitions. So using the clay buildup tool, you'd work the big volumes of the muscles and all those transitions, and then you would go up a subdivision once all that is cleared, and then you would smooth it out and try to clean it up. And then you would go at a higher subdivision, and you would start adding your micro details, and you'd start at the million polygons. But that's when you're using the subdivision method. Here we're using the Dynamesh method, so we're always going to work with a lot more polygons than we would using the subdivide method. Because we have a lot less control on the number of polygons we have. So that's why here we're going to try and stay in that blockout phase for as long as possible. Here I'm trying to work out that skull geometry, trying to make it because those eyes are so big. I want to understand how these eyes are socketed inside the skull. And I have to find out how that beak shape works in the other views we don't have, and how that beak shape works with the lower jaw, trying to keep true to the reference at the same time. So now we've blocked out everything we need, more or less. So now, before we are going to Dynamesh everything together, we're going to make a first pass. Still in the blockout pass, we're going to make a first pass on those lower resolution models groups. We're going to make a first pass at sculpting. So, but it's more of a refining the shape sculpting more than actually sculpting. We're using clay buildup to move or add geometry, and then we're going to Dynamesh. So you can see that the entire piece is 150,000 polygons, but if we go to each subgroup, so like this group, it's only 18,000 polygons. So it's a bit high, but it's not too bad. So you can see there's a lot of blown out polygons on the side, but that's okay. It's perfectly fine for the stage we're in. Now I'm trying to make that lower jaw work. I want to give it more of a spade-like shape. So I'm adding geometry, and then I will be cleaning it up using hard polish to define more faces. Just not really faces, more facets, because now it's a bit blobby. So you can see here, even here at that scale, only 18,000 polygons, and it's still blobby. So imagine if you would just subdivide your model and be at 1 million. There we can see that our jaw and beak, we tried to fix it, and we got too far away from our reference. So now we're going to bring it back down and try to make it work with our reference a little bit better. If something is wrong, and not, you can always fix things later on, but it's going to be more difficult. So if we can catch and fix as many issues now, the less problematic it will be later on. So here I'm cleaning up that that jaw. And here I'm going to start and add the actual skull, because that eye has to fit inside of that skull. So we need to bring that socket back up. Even if you can't really see it because it's hidden behind the horns and so on, you wanna do something about it. So yeah, slowly build it up, refine it, check it. At this stage I work without perspective, because since we're working with a 2D reference and there isn't any perspective inside your 2D with your 2D reference. But once we've finished our blockout phase, usually I will start using perspective. But perspective isn't really all that accurate inside of Zbrush. The way the camera works, and perspective can lead to some issues. If you work from the side and you have perspective turned on and you move something, it's possible you're not grabbing something you wanted, or you're grabbing something else at the same time, because the way the model is skewed due to the perspective view. So yeah, I turn it on and off. If you're doing something very realistic, like a person, it can help to have perspective turned on, since people are usually not that flat. That spade shape is working a bit better. Clean it up. see that that beak really got out of hand, way too wide. So we're gonna try and get back into a better shape. You can see a fair bit of wobbiness. So that's because 59,000 polygons is still a lot of polygons. But we have to, if we don't have a minimum, that's the drawback of working with Dynamesh, is that even at 128, if we set it at 128 and we work on the hands would be very, very low poly. It would be like maybe 3,000 polygons. So that's okay because they are so tiny. But the bigger the part is on your model, so that head is the biggest part we have on the entire body, so the head will have more polygons, since the resolution is based on the scale of the part. So yeah, having 59,000 polygons, having so many polygons introduces warbliness. And so yeah, even if you try to keep it low, issues can still happen. So yeah, when you work with Dynamesh, you have to pick an average. So you want to have a decent amount of polygons for your hands, for your lowest, for your smallest part. But then keep in mind that your biggest part will have then a lot more polygons, and that can cause some issues. Starting to look pretty good. The bits of the face are now working a bit better together, so we're gonna try to fix those arms that are a little bit too thin in the back. Give it a bit of a deltoid muscle. That character doesn't have any neck, so it's a bit of a weird transition area. But since it's so stylized as well, it's not too bad. Trying to figure out how that works. That no neck thingy. Just going to go around the entire model and trying to fix those little issues all around. That back is missing a fair bit of volume. Looking a bit odd. We're going to fix that. Good. Now we are going to probably block out those hands. No. Feet. Feet it is. So yeah, basically just go around your entire character, try to make sure everything is everything makes sense, everything more or less flows. The hands. We're lucky on this model, it's that the hands are closed. So for closed hands, you block out the using hard polish. You block out the planes of the hand to start breaking that ball-like feature. Then using clay buildup here, I'm trying to block out the transition from the wrist. The hands are very undefined on our reference, so I chose to give him 4 fingers instead of 5. So using clay buildup, I am going to block out the thumb and block out those 3 fingers. Like so. And then I'm going to carve in that recessed area of the palm. And then with the diamond standard, I am going to define a bit more of that, those fingers. It's like drawing a hand, but from every angle. There, that should be good enough for a block out. We have roughly the form and roughly the intent, the shape of the hand. It's more than enough now for what we need. And now I am going to start and refine and think about all these scales and the way they are going to flow inside of the skull, and see how that would affect our model. But we're pretty much close to the end of our blockout phase. Just having a look, trying to see if there is something we can fix. Using a different shader, hard polish, I'm going to try and define some of those planes. Now I'm roughing in those transitions and thinking that the beak actually is a lot pointier, so we're going to use the pinch tool and make it a lot sharper. Like so. adding some volume to that beak. Looking a bit more organic. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So we're probably going to wrap up this video. So this is part 1, the Blockout. I'll see you guys later, probably next week, for part 2, where we're going to refine and do a little bit of poly paint, I believe. So yeah, we'll refine, we'll sculpt, start sculpting this, the entire piece. And it's probably going to be a 3-part video. So refine, sculpt, and then probably refine some more, fix, and do a final poly paint. So the 3rd part will be more poly paint oriented, for those who are interested. If you like this video, please do like, share. If you want to cover something specific, maybe we can talk about it in the next video. So do leave a comment, and I will see you guys in the next one. See you later.